Greetings, loved ones. Let's take a journey to 1991. Thelma and Louise hit theaters May 24th, 34 years ago. Directed by Ridley Scott and starring the beautiful Geena Davis and the captivating Susan Sarandon and one cool-ass car, this movie landed with a crash. A lot of the research I did for this video comes from this book, Off the Cliff by Becky Aikman. Spoilers, because we are going to be talking about the ending. If you haven't seen this movie, please go watch this movie and then come back to this video. Trigger warning, as I am going to be talking about sexual assault. If that's not a topic you can sit with, do not watch this video. Thelma, played by Geena Davis, is our spacey, unsatisfied housewife. Louise, Susan Sarandon, is our good-postured diner waitress. The girlfriends skip town for a weekend away from their lives and their respectfully shitty men. They hit the road and Thelma is ready to have some fun. They stop at a bar and she gets to dancing with a man, Harlan. After many drinks and dances, Harlan brings Thelma outside. I noticed watching this time around that he spins her around a bunch while they're dancing, so she gets really dizzy and he has an excuse to bring her outside.
Wait, Louise, I won't come with you.
We need to get you some fresh air.
In the parking lot, Harlan attempts to rape Thelma. He is stopped only by Louise holding a gun to his neck. The women get away, but Harlan keeps talking, degrading Thelma, so Louise shoots and kills him. Knowing that this was not a case of self-defense, so that cops are not an option, the women flee, and Louise's teal Thunderbird, the women are now fugitives on the run. They plan to flee to Mexico, but Louise refuses to drive through Texas. Louise has something against Texas. Harvey Keitel, the empathetic cop, I guess, reveals what the audience has already figured out. Louise was raped in Texas. The detective knowing about this tells us that Louise did go to the cops then, and clearly nothing was done. Susan thought Louise should be driven not by anger or vengeance, but by a will to understand what had happened to her in Texas, and an effort to regain control of her life, to get a grip. In the beginning of the film, Thelma struggles to leave her piece of shit husband for even a weekend, eventually just leaving him a note on the microwave, unable to have the conversation. But with every mile they drive, Thelma leaves her old self behind. She's shook up by the attempted rape and does not gain her wherewithal again until Louise starts to fall apart, after a young Brad Pitt steals all their money, after rocking Thelma's world. Louise had to break down in the Love Nest motel room, and the flighty Thelma, for the first time, would step up and take control. She would order Louise to get herself together, to gather her stuff, to move. Ridley saw it as the most crucial turning point in the story. The final scene of this film has the same emotional chokehold on me as the final moments of Homeward Bound. I just weep every time. Even conjuring the image in my mind evokes tears. Surrounded by cops with only the Grand Canyon in front of them, they can't go back. Thelma says to Louise, "Let's keep going." And they floor it off the cliff. That phrase, a Thelma and Louise moment, has entered the language as a feminist awakening linked to a point of no return. The movie in a nutshell.
But, I don't know, something's like crossed over in me, and I can't go back. I mean, I just couldn't live.
I know what you mean. Anyway, don't want to end up on the damn Geraldo show.
Thelma and Louise was written by Callie Corey. Callie worked as a waitress in Nashville for a while, where she had a lot of good times and bad times, and also made a good friend, Pam Tillis, who would inspire the character of Thelma. Callie left her waitress job in Nashville for Hollywood and worked for years on music video sets. The treatment of women she was exposed to in the industry was a big inspiration for the story. "I'm really sorry," the dancer shuddered. "I have to leave. I was hired to dance and people are putting their hands all over me. I feel like this whole experience is degrading." Thelma and Louise did not get greenlit easily. obviously. Movies about women written by a woman in the 90s. Out of the top 50 movies at the box office the year before, only 2 had been written by women without male partners. That in the previous 5 years, only 13 had been, and that no such woman had won an Oscar for an original screenplay since 1932. On top of that, everyone hated the ending, except Ridley Scott. The Alien director was originally signed on as a producer. He was adamant that he did not want to direct it, and Callie did. But with such an already risky script, an unknown director was not going to happen. Ridley talked to a lot of directors, but the further invested he got into the project, he couldn't let it go, and eventually stepped up to direct. The casting process was delightful to read about. Despite every studio acting like the script was radioactive, every actress in Hollywood was beating down the door to get a read for Thelma or Louise. Interesting female characters don't come along every day, let alone 2. Only 7 of the top 50 movies the year before showcased a woman as the main character. Only 5 a year on average over the previous 5 years. Jodie Foster and Michelle Pfeiffer were cast originally, but dropped out because it took so many years for the project to get rolling. Everyone from Meryl Streep to Cher wanted this role. Scott cast Geena Davis first, who hadn't given up on the part even when Foster and Pfeiffer were cast. Then Susan. Geena and Susan brought a level of talent and perspective to the film that really elevated it. Susan especially was adamant in her view of the story. She and Ridley have said some tense words about each other in interviews, but it's clear there is a deep respect there. Our agendas were not always the same. Our priorities were not always the same, but it was not a question of what's right and what's wrong. If anything, the movie shows that you can have people coming from completely different perspectives, creating a third thing. If this had been directed by a really serious feminist trying to make some kind of statement, it may not have had the air that it needed. Alien undeniably changed the role of women in Hollywood. Ridley Scott is adamant he didn't do this on purpose. He simply thought a female would be a more interesting character in that story. And he felt similarly about Thelma and Louise. It wasn't a feminist campaign to him. It was just a good story. And I think the shooting experience that Susan described for the film proves this feminist neutral stance. The atmosphere was very male. The guys on the crew were all shirtless with their t-shirts around their heads, like a band of cigar-smoking marauders. They adored Ridley and would follow him off a cliff. Susan and Geena's advocacy for themselves and their characters saved the movie from my understanding. Geena talks about her first experience with this project when she was meeting with the Corps for a table read, preparing to give her notes. I had all these girly ways, she says. I would disguise each one and make it as non-threatening as possible. On page 1, I don't think we should do that. Meanwhile, Susan didn't hesitate. She opened the script and pointed out what wasn't working. Geena realized she became Thelma in Susan's presence.
You say you're sorry, or I'm gonna make you fucking sorry.
Oh, Jesus.
I bet you even called us beavers on your CB radio, didn't you?
Yeah, sure did.
Damn, I hate that. I hate being called a beaver, don't you?
You gonna apologize or what?
A lot of people hated Thelma and Louise. A lot of people loved it, but a lot of people really, really hated it. Peter Rayner from The Times called it a sisterhood bash-a-thon, as vague and negligent as a macho shoot-'em-up. Toronto Star ran a headline, Thelma and Louise raises question why recent movies can only show women making progress by making men look like idiots. In which Liz Smith states the women are horrible role models because no one worries about AIDS, using condoms, or encountering a serial killer. Peter Johnson of the New York Times Daily had to say it justifies armed robbery, manslaughter, and chronic drunken driving as exercises and consciousness raising. About as morally and intellectually screwed up as a Hollywood movie can get, said John Leo. The creators of the film were genuinely shocked by the backlash. They had expected some upset, but this was on a whole other level. People just didn't get it. Callie puts it so eloquently, if you have a problem with the men in this movie, you're identifying with the wrong characters. In no way does this film claim to be a moral compass. In fact, most films are not meant to be moral guides, but more so stories for us to explore the complexities of life. What it really came down to is a woman shot a man with a gun. Even though the number of fatalities in 1990's Die Hard 2 reached 264, including 230 in a plane crash. Total Recall the same year treated viewers to 74 souls meeting their ends in explicit detail, 47 of them at the hands of Arnold Schwarzenegger himself. Truthfully, I enjoyed this film first as a revenge fantasy, a wish fulfillment of sorts. But Susan Sarandon's testimony in this book has completely changed my perspective of the story. It's a huge thing to take another life, Susan said. I am not interested in doing a revenge film. I am not interested in being Charles Bronson or Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm interested in the fact that taking a life has consequences, that she has to pay for that. They die in the end. It didn't feel like that when I first watched this movie when I was younger. It felt like they got away. They outsmarted the cops. They flew. But they died. They were young women. They had lives, however stale. They didn't set out on this trip to end their lives. This movie is a tragic ending. There's something very Shakespearean about this film, and it evokes the same tragic sadness as Promising Young Woman because 2 women have to die for 1 man to go down. Perhaps it was the backlash. Perhaps we are waiting around for more Callie Coreys to write more amazing stories. But whatever the reason, we really haven't seen many movies like Thelma and Louise since. Writing for Time last year, Gina Davis, who launched the Gina Davis Institute on Gender and Media, said her organization found that for every 1 female-speaking character, there are 3 male characters. Women only make up about 17% of the people shown in crowds in live action and animated movies, and just about 7% of directors, about 13% of writers, and about 20% of producers are female. Please do not let me understate the positive reception of this film. Callie Corey won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay.
Callie Curry for Thelma Louise.
And while there are still some people getting their feathers ruffled about this movie, Thelma and Louise is generally admired and loved. Some even say it is the origin of the first selfie that Susan and Gina so generously recreated for us a few years ago. Even if Thelma and Louise didn't flip Hollywood on its head, maybe that was never really the point. It wasn't trying to be a manifesto. It was just a great story about some real women in a cool car. I wish more movies let characters make decisions as fucked up as they are human. In the end, Thelma and Louise don't ride off into the sunset. They drive off a cliff. Yet somehow that image still feels a little like freedom because they chose their ending. I think watching Thelma and Louise not quietly bear their pain, but instead lash out, fight back regardless of consequence, makes it easier for some to bear their own pain. And isn't that what movies are for?
You ready? Did it.
No, I know it's crazy. I just feel like I got a knack for this shit.
Thank you so much for watching. I am G Baby. I do video essays and other fun stuff on this channel, so please subscribe for more. Follow me on Instagram for some pics. Follow me on Substack for some words. Leave me a like or a comment if you enjoyed this video. It means so much to me. I love you all. Get home safe.